Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Database. I'm very excited to have MJ with me today again, and we're going to talk about something that we've been talking about, on and off for a while, which is the real-time analytics capabilities in Fabric. And MJ coming from the Azure space, he's been doing this in a kind of a different environment. So it's very so he's got some really good insights about how Fabric is actually apparently it actually made it better, right? Like simpler and everything. So I've been really looking forward to this. And yeah, hopefully we can set up something in the background that we can kind of continue to play around with in the next few episodes as well, like what we did last time. So with that said, MJ, over to you.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much, David. Yes. As you know, the whole concept of IoT, smart buildings, digital twins, right? Like it's a domain that we're both familiar with, and obviously when the whole buzz around it was started, it's all purely driven by cloud, right? Like it's all platform work, a service for this, a service for that, and so on and so forth, right? But now at 2024, entering 2025, this complex technologies that requires skills and understanding of cloud and platforming are now becoming much more democratized, which is really good, right? I don't see it in a negative way. I see it as a progression and I see it as an innovation. All right. Let me share my screen real quick to kind of like show you. Here's a really good information from Microsoft Learn around what's an Azure PaaS-based solution of real-time intelligence versus like a Fabric real-time intelligence player, right? And obviously, it's like a data flow from left to right, like sources from left, consumer on the right, right? Like if you look at the PaaS-based solution on Azure, like your first point of contact is like an event hub, IoT hub, Kafka, and so on, right? And if you look at Fabric, it's still the same, right? You're not trying to reinvent the wheel around that, because you already have like established and mature platforms and streaming capabilities for that. Probably what would have just changed recently is these services itself have matured dramatically since then, and like they've adopted the new AMQP protocol, and that's kind of like what makes it more robust. But that's outside the Fabric, right? Now, this bit here, this whole bit here, it's like a bit more so much, right? Like things like having a separate layer for like storing these events, then doing Event Hub again here, then you have a data lake storage, then you have a digital twin, then there's a streaming aspect on the top that talks to Cosmos DB and operational stuff. And then you have the analytics with Databricks or Azure ML at the bottom. And then you serve that to Power BI or any analytical tools, right? Um, Now that's a bit where it's a bit disconnected in the Azure land, wherein you have different toolings to work on. You have to have a different resources to use for that one, and that's where the power in Fabric this just becomes much more connected, in a way wherein like you can have as many sources, as many of these ingestion sources as possible, right? Like put them into an event stream, and then create a event house. Okay, I will go into that in much more detail later on what event house is. And then from there, you can either create a real-time dashboard, and I'm hinting you this is real-time dashboard, like really, really real-time. It's not like a Power BI report trying to do a direct query every 5 seconds or so. Or you can do reflex, which is kind of like similar to like a Power Automate trigger type of thing. Or through the event stream, you can still forward that to like uh, Azure functions or and so on, right? Like some of this more customizable experience, you can still do that. All right. And again, the beauty of Fabric here is that this is like a real-time flow, but the data science flow is within the same environment, right? Hence, working on Event House, like a data scientist can literally just jump to that same database and work on some, analysis on that. So again, the key value proposition I'm seeing here is that a unified workspace, a unified set of tooling to use, and I guess really just governance perspective, right?
Hmm.
All right. Okay. So this is a workspace in Fabric called, I just called it RTS Hub Dev. And within here, I have a couple of resources. In here, I have a event house, a KQL, a real-time dashboard. They're all connected already. And I just, I'm gonna show this in lineage view, so it's much more. It makes a lot of sense. And this is what I like as well with Fabric, right? Like you have this lineage view where these different files you can have a lineage of like how they're connected somehow, right? Again, in just one workspace.
Yep.
I don't have to look at 7 different things to see
Yeah.
how data is flowing through, right? Okay, so I have an event house. By the way, an event house, for those who don't know, it's like a so in Fabric you have like a three houses, right? Like there are 3 different houses. You have a warehouse, you have a lake house, and you have an event house. So lake house is something like majority uses already, right? It uses that lake house architecture. It supports files more than just tables. And warehouse, again, it's much more for analytical, transactional type of workload. Event house, again, is a specific type of workload for this type of thing, for real time. So although Lakehouse can do some form of real time through Spark streaming and stuff like that, Event House is in Fabric. It's really like a dedicated, specialized service for this set of scenarios, right? Like it's really powerful for this type of things.
Yeah.
And then a KQL database is kind of like an instance within a Event House, right? Um,
Mm.
so yeah, and then an event stream is where you're going to flow in your sources and where should it go, right? And then a reflex is kind of like an action that
Mm.
you want to kind of like do, yeah, just like an if this then that kind of like thing, right? Like from an
You can
event.
process it a little bit.
Yeah. Um, and then this one is like who are the consumers of that KQL database? So I have a dashboard, or a real-time dashboard. Then I have a query set. I'll go into that later on. And then a semantic model that is connected to Power BI as well.
Yep.
Right? Like, man, this is very easy to digest, right? Like you see it like
Yeah.
this, you know what this is already, right? Okay, so now you probably want to look at the event stream itself. Okay, it's either you go through an event stream or you go to this real-time hub. So it depends on your persona and like your way of doing things. Like real-time hub is kind of like a cataloged approach of collating all of these real-time artifacts. Wherein like, oh, you have a stream, you have the tables, and so on, right? Just like in one lake hub, you have like things like tables and reports and stuff. Okay, now you go to the event stream, right? Then from there, right, this is where you can set up alerts, um, and so on, right? But then if you go to the actual event stream, okay, let's load that up. You see a GUI.
Yep.
Just a very straightforward GUI that kind of like shows you, all right, this is a source, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
the event stream. And by the way, this would make more sense if you click edit. You would see things like you can add a source, you can add a destination from that event stream, right? Like you can
Mm.
just add multiple sources here. You can add multiple, consumers or destinations on the other hand.
It's
And
same view as well, very similar view to pipeline.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's why it's very similar to pipelines. Yes, correct. In particular, data flows, right? Very similar to the data
Yeah. Yeah.
flows. Yeah. So this one here, this source is this is to say sample data from Fabric itself called the bicycles source. Yeah, like so it
Yeah.
generates like some telemetry data about bikes, street names, neighborhood, lat long, number of bikes, empty docks and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
it is just sample data that just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. Now in real world scenario, obviously you're gonna add more, like an IoT sensor here, let's say a temperature tracker, or clickstream, like how many people are clicking on a website, or how many this and that, right? Like the idea is not large data, but the idea is meaning tiny data, but like very fast, right? Like that.
Mm.
Those
Yeah.
are the type of data that you're kind of like anticipating here. And then this is the actual event stream, right? Then as you can see here, you're already seeing like sample data here, right? Like so, like literally, you don't have to look at all of them. You just see the sample data, and then you can obviously refresh this. Just it keeps coming along, right? Because this is live data already, right? Like the data is already pushing,
Mm.
regardless if you're doing something or not, right? Like that, the data is just already keep on pushing.
Yep.
Now, and the way to capture historical data, obviously, that's a different, thing of its
Mm.
own. Yeah, like there you go. Right now from here, I created this reflex. We're in the event string edit mode. You can just kind of like create a new reflex, and then from here you can do a create new reflex or call an existing reflex. So the reflex is the artifact that does the action. um, in the event stream edit page is where you're trying to call that, right? So yeah, so as the
So,
reflex itself is a separate object. Right?
so like the box above it is called transform fields.
Oh yes, yes, yes. This one is like if you want to do more transformation, like for example, I added a timestamp as well.
How does that differ from reflex?
Oh, reflex is okay. Probably let's go to the reflex itself. So this
Yep.
is that reflex. We're in for those who are coming from Power Automate. This is very similar to like um yeah, like a thing like there's a trigger and then there's an event. So in this one, like this is where you kind of like set up the triggers and what do you do about it. So in this case, I actually stopped this, but when you start this, the idea here is that I created a trigger wherein if the number of bikes is less than 5 each time, so send me an email. Right. So this is the page where
Uh,
where you're going to create those actions.
yeah, I see. I see. Action. Yeah, I was thinking when you say action, I'm more thinking about data related actions, like doing the transformation. But this is actually integration with like notifications, alerts, and type of things that's
Yeah.
outside of.
Data activator pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then that requires, probably like integration with different other things outside of it, but we don't need to worry about it. We just like from
Yeah.
here, it's just reflex, and then you just pick the type of thing you want to, type of action that you want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
So basically, this is like a GUI, if this then that type of thing, right? Like
yeah,
with an option of do you want to send an email or do you want to send a Teams message or you can do a fabric item. By the way, we could probably talk about that in the future video about this extensibility on
yeah.
fabric item.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, do you get it now? Like the idea of
Yeah.
reflex is like it's like a muscle, right? Like like I tap on you and like you do this, right?
Yeah, so like so if I understand it correctly, like for example, if I have temperature sensors and the data transformation, all the data record will be captured every 10 seconds, let's say. And
Yeah,
then they
yeah.
will all go in. I can add transformation, I can add timestamp, but they all get stored. The reflex is like when the data gets below 10 degrees, for example, a
You can do
trigger.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a trigger and then there's like notification, all kind of things that can happen.
Yeah.
That's the reflex part.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think it's like a database trigger, right? Like a
Mm.
data point. So it's like a time series trigger, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. There you go. All right. Now going back to the event stream, right? Um, yeah, there you go. So now from there I land this event stream data into a KQL. Now again, the thing with KQL is that at this point in time, the stream data you can't query that yet. Right. So you can
Yeah,
set a reflex, which is kind of like just simple. Oh, when you hit this, you do something, right? But
yeah.
then you can perform queries like aggregate this, sum this, like this and that, right? So
Mm.
that's why you have to land that into a KQL database. And the
Yeah,
KQL database is specific for that. We're in like, by the way, this is the same technology that's being used by Azure Log Analytics. We're in like, data keeps coming in, and while it's being populated, you can perform query, right? And you can do
yeah,
much more complex queries around that as well.
yeah. I mean, that's like just for clarification, right? What I didn't realize before is how big the logging data is. It is humongous. Even for like a small organization, because everything can actually trigger logs,
Yeah,
and it can trigger logs on a like every second, every 5 seconds. So logging when we talk about big data, the transaction side of things is pretty small compared to the logging side of things. It's like yeah,
yeah,
so much metadata, so much logs being captured. It's crazy.
yeah,
But
and
yeah,
like
so it's good to know that this is what Azure actually use for logging. Because if it works for logging, it will work for
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much anything.
exactly right. And not to mention multiple instances of that. Like maybe for any reason you want to capture all keyboard strokes of all of your 30, 50,000 employees, right? Like
Oh, that would
what
never
mechanism
happen. That's
can
like Big
handle
Brother.
that? I'm just saying, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the technology exists now that facilitates that high level of throughput. And again, that's the actually brings up another paradigm shift that's happening in the analytical space. Traditionally, you really separate an OLTP and OLAP workload, right?
Yeah.
But a KQL database or this type of workload is very heavy on read write. right? It's like minute writes, like super heavy writes, so many writes. But at the same time, you can still perform a massive read. So, like if you tell me about this decades ago, no one's gonna believe you, right? This thing doesn't exist, but it does now.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go to the KQL itself. So, um, there's two ways to do that, or there's many ways to do it, but I prefer to go into a query set. Um, so that you're kind of like in a point of view of creating a query, but you can also open the KQL and try to perform a query on that. I'll quickly show you what I mean, right? Like if you go to that route or in a open the KQL database, right? Then if you open it from here, you would see this KQL database and you can perform a query, so on and so forth, right? Like you can perform a query and stuff like that. But more than just performing query, you can also do like materialize views, functions, shortcuts. So we can talk about that in the future. But yeah, like you're kind of like looking at the point of view of the database itself. So things like, oh, how big is this? So by the way, this is also a good thing to show that KQL are really optimized for compression. So like the original size is 13 megs, but it's compressed
Mm.
to 2.78 megs, right? So a
Yeah.
really good compression ratio over there. Um, Now, going to the query sets, I already created this query set wherein I can do things like summarize, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like timestamp, number of bikes, sort by bike point, and this uses the KQL syntax. So
Mm.
the KQL syntax is kind of like follows like this, wherein this is the table that you're trying to query. Then
Yeah.
you pipe, pipe action, pipe sort, pipe action, right? Like it just follows that kind of like syntax. It's not
Yeah.
that hard to be honest. It's very Python-ish like. To
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's even more for people who has some experience with R. R actually, like from
yeah,
a
yes,
like tidyverse and like pipe, it's so nice. It's one thing I really like about R as well. It's like you can just
yeah,
pipe things like crazy.
yeah. So that's why when someone tells me about what's this KQL thing, like it's very easy to learn and it's very yeah, like again, it kind of makes
Intuitive,
sense.
right? It's like
Intuitive, yes,
when you do data processing, it's always like one thing after the other. Anyway, you want to do a
yeah,
summarize and then like you sort,
exactly,
maybe
yeah,
filter, and it's just step by step. So type
yeah.
actually,
and
yeah, it makes
and
sense.
and just looking at, and just again the analogy of data being liquid form or like lake or something, right? Like hey,
Yep,
here's a table which is like a big chunk of water and you use
yep,
a pipe to filter it down and use a pipe to filter it down, right? Like it just, if you visualize it that way, it
yep,
really
yep.
helps you navigate it further, right?
And it's very easy to read as well. Like
Yeah,
I love Python because like you can just see all the what's the next action, what's the next action. It's yeah, it's good. I think
yeah,
it's
so
Python should be doing more of this actually.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, all right, there you go. Right. So it's very, yeah. Again, within the KQL query set, you can actually see them as tables. You can see them as graphs, or you can do stats. See stats around here as well. And again, these are all built in already within the query set capability. Right. You can do more things like you can do like neighborhood, more queries here and there. Like
Mm,
summarize is one of the most, I guess, good use case of KQL as well because you're doing aggregation already on a query level before you actually serve it to a report or any kind of like model, right? Like semantic model. All right. Now from here, there are two ways, and it's very easy, right? Like literally, you're looking at it already. You can either pin it to a dashboard, which is
yep.
a real-time dashboard. This is not a
Mm,
Power BI dashboard, right? Like this is a
yep.
real-time dashboard. Or you can push it to Power BI. If you push it to Power BI, the main difference is that Power BI requires a semantic model, right? To kind of like use that as a kind of like point of view of serving that data to a report, right? Yeah, but in a dashboard, it's within the, I guess, in the event hub still, right? Like it's still within this
Yep.
stream territory. So I
Mm,
already created that dashboard already, right? But you
yep.
can just spin that as well. Actually, we can just spin that again if you want. Um, so yeah, the tutorial dashboard, right? Um, again, summary three. Yeah, I just want to call it that way. Um, and then there you go. Like this is your real-time dashboard, right? Like
Yep.
this is a dashboard that just is real time. It's not Power
Yeah.
BI. It's literally a real-time dashboard. Like as of less than a minute ago, you see that, right? Like there's that
Yeah.
thing there. Like the refresh interval is really fast in here, right? And
Yeah.
it's meant to kind of like give you this insight at this very, very minute, right?
Mm. And
Yeah. So
so with the KQL, because KQL will you can add a bit of business logic in there before so it's every time there's some data coming in, you actually go through that KQL
yeah. So the
query, and then
set, yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Yes.
So yeah, because that query, right? Like even if you're working on gazillions of data, right? It's gonna be fast, right?
Mm.
Again, special purpose for this one. That's why because of that, right? Like this visualization is just a way. It's just a dashboard that just shows you a bunch of KQL queries, you know,
Yeah.
happening every less than a minute or so, right? Uh,
Yep.
yeah. So again, really, really nice
Super
feature, right?
cool.
Like,
Yep.
um, yeah, like again, this for me looks simple to look here because again the visuals might be very simple, but like having this capability, do this in less than a day or so, that's powerful, man. I'm telling you, like
Yes.
having this capability this simple in a day, um, without having to set up the whole thing. This is powerful. I'm telling you, there's so many use cases that will unlock this year, next 2 3 years around this space. Um,
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
and when we talk to the business users, they always talk about like real time, but what they actually talk about real time, they already kind of compromise a lot. Sometimes daily data for them is real time, and because they know they can't really have the real time, but this could be a game changer when people say, "Hey, I want real time." Um, they can literally have a real time dashboard, and I think with anything, I assume there's pros and cons, right? There's bound to be some kind of limitation, which is probably something that we can explore in the
yeah,
future episodes as well.
yeah.
To dive deep into. There's a lot of different components already,
Yeah,
and very
like the first
yeah.
limitation I'm already seeing, man, is the experience, right? Like this looks simple. Like this is not
Yeah.
customizable. What if I want green? I want to use yellow. I want to use my branding. Like that thing, right? Like this doesn't have that yet. The real time dashboard of Fabric in the Event Hub, sorry, in the real time intelligence suite doesn't have that yet. Okay,
Mm.
hence
I am wondering though, like, uh, is this dashboard? Can I pin a Power BI visual in this dashboard?
Okay, now you actually made a good point. Unfortunately, no. So you have to go the other way around. Or in
Oh,
you have remember, and this is where it's really gonna work, man. And listen on this really quick. So if we go back here, right, to the lineage. So you see here that KQL database.
yep.
There's that semantic model, and then there's the Power BI
Uh,
report, right? So this is real time. This is fast, not real time. This is fast, and then this is fast, right? Because if you look at it again, this is that power of Power BI sitting within Fabric, within co-tenanted and everything, right? So that's why the semantic model from coming from this KQL database is fast. It's not
yep.
as fast as it's not as real time as the real time dashboard, but this is fast.
Yep.
Okay, so that's why when you open this report, right? This report. Now, this is where that part where in, hey, this is all Power BI. You can edit this, right? Like you can use custom, all those custom elements that you like
Mm.
maps and everything, right? Um, now this is fast, but to an extent, you can still probably call this real time, right? Um, but yeah, the thing is, this is not as fast as
Yep.
the real time dashboard, right?
Yeah, love to explore a bit more on this on the visualizations. There's obviously one of the areas that we can continue to explore, but um, I think that's probably like enough content for one episode.
Yeah,
I'll go back.
because I'm telling you, man, because this is
Yeah,
easy, right? Like that's
I
why when I
know.
looked at it, man, I'm blown away. Like how easy it is where we don't have to spend
Yeah,
3 hours setting up things, discussing about integration, service principles, or like things like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, because everything's baked in, man.
That's cool. That's cool. Hey, look, really amazing. It's probably like it's just incredible introduction to the whole real-time analytics within Fabric. This is like mentioned a couple of times. It's such a game changer in so many different ways as well, and the integration, every side of thing is kind of done really well. But in the next few episodes, we'll probably try to debundle it a little bit and look at, in the individual components and hopefully dive a little bit deeper as well. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, please follow and subscribe. And thanks MJ as well.
All right, no worries, David. Yeah, again, thanks for watching. See ya.